Some were on their honeymoons. Others were studying abroad. Still others were in synagogues dancing with the Torah. But whether they were in Tel Aviv or traveling in Japan, or whether they were left-wing or right-wing, whether they were professors or taxi drivers, when they got the call, when they heard the news, they tore themselves away. They tore themselves away from an operating room and from a shop and from a lawyer's office, and they tore themselves away from the bus that they drive, and they stepped forward to serve. Nimrod Nidan, a 23-year-old, was studying medicine in Lithuania. I can't sit here and study while I know that my friends are fighting and my family needs protection. This is my time, he said. LK, a 37-year-old, works for a tech company in New York. He immediately left his home, his wife, his children to hurry back to his squadron. There's no other place in the world that I would rather be, he said. If I had to sit in my lovely apartment on the Upper West Side watching this, I would never forgive myself. Commander A is thin with gray hair and a kind smile. When someone pulled him out of the hakafot, the Torah dancing, and said something is happening that we've never seen before, he ran home, he grabbed his miluim bag from under his bed, and he went to the gathering point. He grabbed his miluim bag, a bag that was ever ready, a bag that says, I will answer the call when it comes. I want to pause this morning and consider the role and the ethic of reservists. And Parshat Tetzaveh invites that consideration. I invite you to open with me for a moment in your Chumashim to page 510. Amud 150 ו10. Page 510. And look with me in verses 40 and 41. And for Aaron's sons also, so this is God speaking to Moshe, for Aaron's sons also you shall make tunics, so the special clothes that they were to wear, and make sashes for them, and make turbans for them, for dignity and adornment. Put these on your brother Aaron, and on his sons as well. Anoint them and ordain them, and consecrate them to serve me as a priest. Now, let's see the Hebrew in verse 41, specifically that phrase, consecrate them. Look with me. V'ilbashta otam et Aaron achicha vet banav ito, umashachta otam, and here's the phrase, umileta et yadam. Mileta et yadam. That's translated as consecrate them. We know the word malay. Malay means full, and yad means hand, although in the Torah sometimes yad is an expression of power. So you might think that mileta et yadam means fill up their hands. But in the Torah, as you see, this phrase refers to consecrating or appointing or authorizing a person for a position. Moshe ordained Aaron and his sons, and this was symbolized when they donned these special clothes. They put on these clothes as described throughout our parsha, and then if you turn the page, one page, page 512, and look at verse 9 where there's that kind of paragraph break. What does it say? You shall ordain Aaron and his sons, and in the Hebrew, umileta yad Aaron v'yad banav. And that phrase appears over and over again in our parsha, as well as at the end of our haftarah. To ordain Aaron and his sons is to malay et yadav, to fill his hands. What followed after this ordination was a week-long ceremony that involved all kinds of special rituals and sacrifices. One of the sacrifices was called the Ayil HaMiluim, the ram of ordination. The passage, this ceremony is described later in the Torah, in chapter 8 of the book of Leviticus, and those 7 days were called Yemei Miluim, the day of Miluim, of filling or fulfillment. the days of consecration. The passage describing that ceremony in chapter 8 of Leviticus concludes, Moshe told Aaron and his sons, "You shall not leave the tent of meeting for 7 days until the days of your consecration are complete, for you shall be consecrated for a 7-day period, ki shivat yamin yimalei et yadchem." Now, there are various theories that try to explain this idiom, limalei yad. Perhaps it refers to sacrificial offerings in which a portion of the ram's right thigh, a piece of matzah, a loaf of bread, and a grain offering was placed into the hands of the newly appointed Kohanim. Alternatively, drawing on a French tradition, Rashi explains that the newly inaugurated officials were given a leather glove as a symbol of their office. Both understand this phrase literally. Their hands were literally filled with something. Ramban, on the other hand, sees the term as figurative, as when we might say, "I have my hands full." So newly appointed leaders, they have their hands full. Whatever the origin of the phrase, this year I have a different association. Again, you can close your Chumashim. In Israel and in modern Hebrew, miluim means reserve duty. Miluimnikim are soldiers who, having already completed their 2 or 3 years of obligatory service, are called back for a month or more, a year, to serve. And of course, in the last 4 months, hundreds of thousands have been called up. Here is one of their stories. And even as I share it, we acknowledge that war is ugly and imperfect. We've heard reports recently of soldiers and reservists, a minority to be sure, who have raided the homes of innocent Palestinians and who have trashed and looted those homes, and who have celebrated the destruction of homes and buildings in Gaza. And we acknowledge the suffering of Gazans and the death of innocent Palestinians, including many children. At the same time, we are grateful for these citizen soldiers who, without hesitation, grabbed their miluim bags to protect and defend Israel. Looking back on his 100 days as a reservist, journalist Michael Starr writes as follows: "While the scent of death hung close to massacre sites and battlefields, the miasma of uncertainty lingered on in us through the 100 days of service. We never knew when we would receive a new mission or base, when we would be sent for leave. Even with this frustration, we marched out into the wilderness between kibbutzim and the Gaza border and staked out strategic points for infiltration. The entire war was accented by intense moments of action and tension, only to be followed by sudden and long periods of boredom and tediousness. These droughts of activity would in turn be abruptly broken, as our wait in the forest had been. When the command came down, we loaded our equipment onto our backs and marched in 2 rows into Gaza. The strip was silent, a silence interrupted only by the booming of our hearts and of distant explosions. Our mission was to secure a vital logistics road, which the Commando Brigade would use to enter Khan Yunis. After this, the road would continue to be a vital lifeline for food, ammunition, and other supplies. The silence of our entry was short-lived. Almost as soon as we arrived, a mortar bomb fell next to our position. And for the next month and a half, we were subjected to the constant drum of drones, gunfire, and every munition imaginable. There were no civilians. They had all evacuated, save for one man who came to our lines carrying a child. During interrogation, he claimed to have been looking for food. He was suspected by some to be a Hamas spy, bringing a child as a shield because it was known that the sight of children stays our trigger finger. We sent him on his way with food, water, and a sleeping bag. The area was a hive of Hamas operatives, honeycombed with tunnels. Every operation revealed more entrances, indicated more houses booby-trapped. On December 10th, the company searched a junction near a school. First platoon discovered a house with Hamas uniforms, manuals, and flags, and a tunnel entrance. No sooner had the shaft been spotted than an IED was set off, and Hamas operatives opened fire from the school. Elia was killed in the explosion along with Roe's radio man, Staff Sergeant Major Ari Zeinelman, and a battalion command squad members, Major Roman Bronstein. The battalion commander was wounded by shrapnel along with another member of his squad. Roe was wounded in the leg and face, or in his foot and elbow. The platoon returned fire while extracting the dead and wounded to hospitals. Just then, a tank came crashing through the village, directing gunfire and shells at the gunmen. At least 5 terrorists were killed in the battle. The company returned to its outpost, but it would relive that moment forever. The bravery of heroes like Martin, David, Shemesh, and Roe isn't just found in the great moments of firefights and explosions. It's also found in the quiet moments, the tired soldier who resolves to rise for his unending guardships, the one who takes on the next mission despite not having seen his family for a month, the one who carries the weight of unseen scars as he waits for the night to break into dawn. Courage is found between the steps in the decision to carry on. And so the war continues, he concludes, and so shall we. Back to civilian life, and when the time comes, we will don our uniforms again. However, most of us will never serve in Gaza, and we're grateful for the incredible bravery and sacrifice of those soldiers and reservists who do. But I believe that this phrase in our Parsha, Limalei Yad, in it there is a message for all of us. That lesson is brought by the Hasidic master, the Kedushat Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev, on that verse that we looked at that says, "You shall ordain Aaron and his sons, umelete yad Aaron v'yad banav." This commentary contrasts temporary fulfillment that we experience from physical pleasures from long-lasting contentment that we achieve by living a life of service. The Kedushat Levi explains that when it comes to this world, when it comes to our physical, our material lives, we can never be fully satisfied. Now, he's actually speaking about sexual desire, but it could just as easily apply to sweets or sleep or time, let's say, in a sauna. Whatever our pleasure point is, he says that we're never truly full. Our hands are left grasping for more. Masha'ein kain b'avodat hakodesh, but that's not the case, said the Kedushat Levi, when it comes to service, to serving the Holy One a blessing. In that case, our hands are not only full of responsibility, they're full of blessings. The Torah says, "Umelete et yad Aaron v'yad banav," that we should fill the hands of Aaron and his sons, meaning Moshe dedicate Aaron and his sons. Such service, the Kedushat Levi teaches, will fill them with pleasure that far exceeds any earthly delight. Zeh ha'ta'anug shel avodat Hashem ole akulam. For one who cleaves to God is completely full. And this is why the period of consecration is called miluim, meaning fulfillment. For when the Shekhinah, Kedushat Levi concludes, when God's presence came to dwell among them, they were filled with joy and delight. To the Kedushat Levi, being of service is the greatest joy. It reminds me of people who volunteer and people who give tzedakah, who say, actually, I received more than I gave. Because to serve is not just a duty, it's an honor and a privilege. Probably few in the Israeli reserves would describe their service as pleasurable. Fighting in the hell that is Gaza and in the cold of the snowy north is anything but a delight. And yet I have a sense that the Miluimnikim would appreciate this teaching. In other years, they might have found excuses to avoid serving. but not this year. Of course, they would rather be at home with their family or on the beaches of Thailand or at a university studying. But they know that there is a higher avoda, a higher form of service. Though it means denying themselves certain pleasures, they sense the holiness in serving their country and in serving our people and our God. Like Avnei Miluim, the precious stones described in our Parsha, worn by the Kohanim, they are our people's precious gems, consecrated to a sacred task. For us here in the diaspora and for us here at Bethel, we too are called upon to serve. We can devote some time each week to Torah study, to volunteering at the Purim Carnival, to getting up early once a week to help make sure that we have a minyan, to joining others for Sunday morning cleanup this spring to prepare our gardens, to give tzedakah to ensure that our congregation's financial sustainability will carry on and on and on. In these and other acts, we ask people to divert our time and our energy and our attention and our resources from some areas of life in which we might find pleasure and to focus on those in need, to strengthen our community and to honor God. Doing so, we hardly will be left feeling empty-handed. Rather, doing so, we will feel truly full.